he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mantis 100 back again with another episode of How's My Team. It's very early Monday morning. We don't have too much to talk about, but let's start with the weekend. So yeah, a bit of a weekend of disappointment because the Titans, they played yesterday afternoon and it was another 16-point loss away from home, 40 points to 24. With the Raiders over the Titans. So officially, that puts us with an extra point in for and against in the negative. That puts us in last place, puts us in 17th, because the Eels ended up winning earlier this week, and it's to be expected, honestly. I thought maybe they might have had a better fight, and ultimately, like I said, they put 24 points on the Raiders. The Raiders ultimately are in the top 4 still. Actually, they did drop out of the top 4 leading into yesterday because the Sharks ended up winning against the Storm. So the Sharks were in 4th, as was Storm was in 3rd. So the Raiders stay in 3rd place, not too far behind, obviously, the Warriors and the Bulldogs at the top. The Storm dropped to 4th, whereas the Sharks are in 5th. But yeah, pretty disastrous, honestly. We did obviously take the lead, and it ended up being a situation where at halftime we were only down. We were actually only down by 6 points because they scored 18. It was 18 points to 12 at halftime, and they'd scored like 4 or 5 tries in that half of football. Obviously the conversions were not as good as they could have been, but we just kind of dropped intensity because it was 12 all, then they scored just before half time, so that kind of sucked, and then they scored like immediately after the start of the second half, and that's it. They just kept on scoring before we scored again. I turned off the game and I was watching a lot of the AFL basically at the point that Hudson Young scored towards the mid part of the second half, because I just had enough. I think I turned off the game a couple of times because obviously, since I got the app on my phone, it comes up with, I've set it so that the notifications will pop up when the team scores during a game. But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. It's another 16-point loss. It just seems to be that 16 points, for whatever reason, is a number that keeps showing up, because we've lost games twice by 16, and then we've scored 16 points in one of those games. But it's really disappointing in the fact that we can't seem to score like over. I think the highest score I think we've got is 30 points this year. So we can't consistently score over 24 because we've scored 24 in the last two games, including obviously the win against Newcastle. And then before that was 18, 18, 20, 16, 10. And then obviously against the Roosters it was 30, then 26 against Newcastle the first time around, and then 24 against the Bulldogs in the first time we played them. But I don't know whether it's this, because we have the bye obviously next week. I don't know whether it's good timing for that or not, because obviously, yes, Origin is not Wednesday coming up, but the Wednesday after. And then we play the Storm on the Saturday after Origin 1. So I don't know whether it's good timing of the bye being this coming week or whether it could have been next week, because I know that the Dogs have the bye the weekend after. So not this week coming, but the next week after that. They've got the bye after Origin 1. So I'm a little bit disappointed. We'll see what happens. Obviously, at this point in time, the New South Wales Blues squad has been announced. Obviously, not Queensland. That will happen today. Will happen later today. Blues side looks pretty good. There's only maybe one or two additions that were kind of not expected. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, with that putting us in last, I feel like we kind of deserve that. Minus 100 compared to minus 99. But we have scored 210 points for. It's just our defense has obviously let us down with 310 points let in, which is not great at all. I think it's only the points for that is saving us at the moment, because that puts us in front of Newcastle, who's in last in terms of that stat. The Eels, and that also puts us in front of the Rabbitohs as well, because they've got 181. So they're only like 2 points in front of the Eels in terms of for and against. In terms of, points for, not points against. Because they've only got minus 233. But obviously with their win last night against the Tigers, they move up to 7th. But yeah, so it puts us in last, at least for this week. The bye coming in next week, obviously we'll get 2 points for that. Might just jump a few teams, because obviously we've got the Dolphins in front of us. That's the Dogs. Then you've got Newcastle and the Panthers. Panthers are on 9 points, so it depends on who wins that game, but we could jump them as well, but their for and against is at 74, so we're behind them. So it could be the Panthers getting the win in that game. I would imagine it would be the Panthers. But again, it is just before Origin, so a lot of the Origin players will be out for the Panthers as well as Newcastle. So we'll see what happens. And then obviously the Eels playing their rivalry against Manly. So could jump a couple of spots if we're lucky, with obviously the 2 points from the bye. But yeah, on the bottom, seem to be consistently there. There's not too many people that are trying at the moment, and that's what pisses me off the most about this. Is that I like Kieran Foran played all right first game back. Jaden made a few errors and dropped a few balls, which was not great. But obviously, a lot of moving pieces. Like, Jalen DeGroot only got like 7 minutes. Obviously, there was a change of him being off the side and on the bench instead, and having AJ Brimson at fullback. Francis dropped a couple of opportunities, conceded a lot of points at crucial times, which was not ideal. I think that he dropped the ball about 2 or 3 times that led into tries for the Raiders at least. So by far he was not playing well at all. There is a possibility that he could be dropped, I'd say, for the week after. Obviously, partially it was due to him going in for an injury. But yeah, so yeah, 40 points to 24. The Raiders over the Titans again. Yes, I've got my old Titans jersey on, but yeah, it puts us in last, which is great. And with that, we're going to move on to the Giants. I went to this game, and we're going to see some few photos at the end of this. But yeah, they also lost. They lost majorly. They lost by 34 points against Walyalup. I'm going to try and get this right because it is an Aboriginal name, because it was Sir Doug Nicholls Round, which obviously celebrates a lot of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, like the First Nation people. Walyalup, I believe, is how it's supposed to be pronounced, or something like that. Obviously Fremantle. So Fremantle was Fremantle 95, the Giants 61 at home, and the accuracy with both teams was very bad because it was 13 goals 17 to 8 goals 13. So you're looking at it, it was 21 goals to 30 behinds. So pretty inconsistent. I'd say there was a couple of players that did pull their finger out. Obviously, Darcy Jones was back for this game, and he pulled his finger out a little bit. Arguably was probably the best player on the ground for the Giants. Obviously, the social media team made him the most valuable Giant, or like the MVP of the team. Kieran Briggs, I think, played relatively well. Jesse Hogan didn't get the ball a lot, but did try to assist the team in any way that he could. That wasn't even just goal scoring. Toby Green played relatively okay, gave away a silly 50-metre penalty during the game. Also got one that he ended up getting himself as well. But yeah, so it was pretty close. It was 6 points at the first quarter. The end of the first quarter that Fremantle were in front. But then they scored 2 goals, 6 in the second quarter, whereas we scored 4 goals, 5. So we were relatively in the game at halftime, but by the time third quarter rolled around, it was 8 goals, 15 to 4 goals, 10. So we only scored 5 behinds in the third quarter, and then had a little bit of a flurry in the last quarter and scored 4 goals, 3 compared to 5 goals, 2. So we relatively did okay in the fourth quarter. Obviously, Walyalup kept their consistency in the last quarter as well, but they ended up they had pressure on them as well for the coach regardless in this game for Freo, so they needed to step up and play well, and so they still stay in ninth, and the Giants somehow miraculously stay in 8th with this loss. I think partially because of the percentage from earlier games this year. So we are in 8th. Was lucky because the Western Bulldogs needed to win as well, because Essendon are on the same amount of points as us before even that game was played. It was just a percentage, so if Essendon did win, they would have jumped into the 8, and would have pushed the Giants out of ninth, and even obviously Fremantle, they would have won, but would have dropped a place to 10th despite that. So thankfully the Bulldogs majorly put a belting on Essendon to jump into 5th. Brisbane Lions went down to Melbourne yesterday, so they dropped to 2nd. Collingwood jump up to 1st because obviously they won over Adelaide. But yeah, we're lucky to stay in 8th at the moment. But this was a game that necessarily we should have won, especially at home. It is one of those things where Fremantle seems to be one of those teams every year, whether it's home or away, that we play relatively weird against because we have won a decent amount at home against them. But they were under the pressure cooker as well. In fact, actually, they were probably under the pressure cooker more so than the Giants. But yeah, they deserve the win. Their inaccuracy was really bad though, and I think the fact that only the Giants, their accuracy kind of costed them a little bit as well. But obviously, in one way, I will say that the best thing about Freo is a lot of their ball movement. They have been pretty good in that department for most of the year. When they've been able to get it away from when they can move the ball from their defensive 50 into the forward half. They are pretty good at that. That is one thing that they've been consistent at, is making plays at that, and they did it a lot against the Giants. The Giants just could not keep possession at all, and when Fremantle had it, they kept consistent possession and didn't have long kicks. But when they did have long kicks, obviously they had a few players in and cleaned up messes that they kind of might have made with the defense. Whereas with the Giants, they couldn't really move the ball laterally a lot. They couldn't move it around. They had to kick long, and when they kicked long, the defensive pressure of Fremantle Dockers was too high, and there seemed to be multiple players where the ball would drop as well. So it was a very, very ordinary performance from the Giants. Kind of really needed to win this game. Obviously, as we said last week, the next month was going to be very important. Obviously, going down to Walyalup. This game, obviously, with the fixtures coming up, we're going to go down to Marvel Stadium next week on Saturday to play Carlton. So that's going to be interesting, considering that Carlton have been up and down and all over the place, but they've won the last few games. And then we're back at NG Stadium the week after against Richmond, which I don't know whether I'm going to that game. I think maybe I might miss that one, because I do have, with my membership, obviously have 4 tickets, tickets to 4 games this year. And obviously I've used tickets to the Fremantle game and used tickets to West Coast. I could go to the Richmond game, but I'm debating on keeping my tickets until obviously the Suns game when we go home at NG Stadium towards the end of June, which is in 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So I'll have to ask for that weekend off. Yeah, so against Carlton, then against Richmond, then against Port, and then against Brisbane, then the Gold Coast before the bye. So very important that we win the next couple of games, especially against Carlton and against Richmond. If we can win by a decent amount of points in both of those games as well, that'd be great. Then obviously the Port game in Canberra, who knows, because both teams do have to travel. Obviously the Giants don't have to travel nearly as far as Port Adelaide, but yeah, pretty bad 34 point loss at home. against a team that's coming from Western Australia. So they've got to travel quite a lot because they played at home last week. But yeah, so they kind of, I think Walyalup kind of eased the pressure a little bit on Coach Longmuir, but not by a lot. I think they're still, obviously, yes, outside of the 8, and they're on the same amount of points as the team in 8th and 7th, but oh no, actually, sorry, the team in 8th, because Geelong did win as well. They won heavily against Port Adelaide. But you need to be playing better as well. They need to be playing better, and their coach is still pretty much in the pressure cooker. It depends on who they play next week, because yeah, I'd say within probably towards the end of the season, if they don't make finals, Longmuir might be gone. Whereas if we don't make finals, Kingsley maybe could be on the chopping block. He definitely will be under pressure leading into next season if he doesn't. If the Giants don't make finals, but again, it's still a decent amount of time left. Obviously, it's like the end of May, so getting closer to September, but we're not too far away. But we're still quite a few games left for this season. But yeah, 34-point loss at home. Not great, but here's some pictures. It was a mid-afternoon game, so we did end up getting the lights. The travel back home was pretty bad. We missed a train as well, and a train did get cancelled on us that we were going to go on. So I didn't get home until 11:30 that night. So yeah, not great. Not great. I think it was almost midnight by the time I actually got home. So yeah, not ideal, but it was an alright game. The weather was pretty good, but lost all the same. So yeah, that's that episode for How's My Team. Obviously, we don't have to talk about too much. We can talk about some miscellaneous stuff. Obviously, the Premier League. Jamie Vardy scored in his 500th game. Obviously, Leicester City won that game. So he scored 200 goals in the Premier League in his 500th appearance. Arsenal won against Newcastle. So that was second versus third. So they're confirmed for Champions League football. Chelsea won, so that ended up putting Manchester City in fifth. Obviously, I don't know. They don't play for another few few days. And speaking on Manchester City, Crystal Palace ended up winning the FA Cup final against Manchester City. It was only 1-0. Obviously, it was kind of controversial in terms of the goalie not getting a red card for a play outside of the box, or what seemed to be close to outside the box, that even VAR checked and said that it was no. A lot of people will go against and say that obviously VAR kind of costed Manchester City, but if it did, they should have scored, honestly. And I know some people will say, but it was a goal scoring opportunity. It's a bit hard. I don't think you can necessarily overturn it. Obviously, Haaland is a good player, but I don't know whether you can overturn and say that he was 100% going for a shot on goal from that opportunity, from where he was on the field, where his stance was as well, and what the goalkeeper was doing. It's a bit hard to say, oh yeah, that 100% means that Haaland was going to go for a shot, because he could have hit the ball again to get a little bit wider, but to get the angle so that he could beat the defender and the goalkeeper as well. You never know. So congrats to Crystal Palace, their first major trophy in European competition in their history. So fantastic on that. They played relatively good football most of the year. They're sitting around the middle of the Premier League table, so it's not in a bad situation. But yeah, we got that. In the A-League, Victory went down 1-0 against Auckland FC, and it looks like Melbourne City will probably be in the grand final, because they're in front in the first leg by 3-0 against Western United. So they don't have to travel too far. They will go to Ironbark on, I think that's on the Saturday, because they'll switch, because they played on the Friday, whereas Auckland and Victory played on the Saturday. But Auckland and Victory will have to travel to Auckland and Go Media Stadium to play in New Zealand on the second leg. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Central Coast women won last night against Victory. So Victory went down twice in the space of 24 hours, which is pretty funny. But they went down to penalties. So it was 1-1 at the end of full time, in normal time and extra time. And Victory only missed one of their penalty shots. So it was actually the first 5 penalties. Central Coast scored all of them, and Victory missed the first one and scored the rest. So yeah, so that means that for the third year in a row, a team from Central Coast has won their respective league. Obviously, the last 2 years it's been the men's team, now it's the women's team, and pretty interesting story in the fact that 2 years ago they'd just come back into the competition and made finals last year, got to the semis, lost that game, lost those games, and ended up the next season winning the whole lot. A lot of people will say that in the semis that they were offside against Melbourne City, but you know, you play those, it was relatively close. I looked at that moment over and over and over again watching the replay, and it was relatively close. I think there is a possibility they could have been offside, but with no VAR, they couldn't tell, obviously. And, you know, there was a few calls that could have went against Central Coast. There was a few that could have went against Victory. But there was no VAR, and some people were complaining about some of the calls. It's like, well, you say VAR messes up with the men's game a lot, and you have a lot this year in terms of both the A-League and the EPL, and yet you're saying it's wrong with some of these calls with some of the referees without VAR. But, you know, that's the consistency that's going to happen. You know, if there is a call that gets missed, there is a call that's going to get missed without VAR. But don't complain about the VAR if the VAR gets it right. So, yeah. So with all that said, a little bit of a shorter episode of this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, we don't have to talk about too much. And it might even be shorter next week, considering that the Titans are also not playing, but the Giants are. But I was going to say it's going to be shorter, but we'll talk about Liverpool next week because they don't play until tomorrow morning, my time. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this shorter episode of How's My Team. This has been my Mentors 100. You guys have a great day and night, and of course, take care.